Good morning, happy Sabbath. So a few years ago, when I was in middle school, I used to play the flute. And in grade 7 and 8, I went to music camp with my sister. It was a full week I got to spend outdoors playing music by the lake, as opposed to in a middle school classroom in the middle of June with no air conditioning. So I was very excited to go. One thing to know about me is that I love planning. I have so many little books that are filled with lists and schedules and all these budgets and stuff, not normally followed through with, but I have them. And whenever I'd go on these trips or to camps or whatever, the amount of lists and schedules would multiply, and I have run out of many books to useless lists. There would be packing lists, daily schedules, weekly schedules. I'd plan my mornings and evenings. I once, a few times printed off maps of the camps, and this past year, while talking to my friend, I drew a map from memory. So suffice to say, when camp's involved, I get very excited. When we went to this music camp, it wasn't much different. I planned a lot. I was very excited. And finally, we were in the car, and we were heading to the mall where the bus was picking us up. But as we were taking our luggage from the car to the bus, I realized I had forgotten my flute at home. It was a music camp, and I forgot my flute at home. Fortunately for me, my dad loves me a lot. He drove back home and all the way back to the mall to bring me my flutes, and the people from the camp were kind enough to wait for us. And this is a little bit off topic, well, not if you're me and you know what I'm saying, but this past year I decided to take computer studies. I've always been interested in coding, but I've never done it, not till this past semester anyways. I've always wanted to learn. But what I came to learn this year is that I suck at coding. In fact, for a good portion of the first term of the class, I was failing with a 40-something% and only managed to finish the first term off with a 54. I was very ashamed of my mark. I refused to ask for help, and I thought I could bring it up all by myself. I couldn't, and one day while I was doing my computer science work, I saw my mark and got really upset. My mom sat with me, calmed me down, and convinced me to ask my teacher for help. After a while, I got over my stubborn ego and emailed my teacher. I've come to learn that a lot of people struggle with a stubborn ego, thinking they can do it their own way, or they're always right, and their way is the best way. For example, Moses fought with God for a long time before agreeing to do what he asked. He tried to convince God that he knew the situation better than him. Jonah did the exact opposite of what God asked, and he ran away. But then there's Noah. And right off the bat, we know that Noah was an exceptionally good person. In fact, in Genesis 6, verse 9, it says, Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. So, Noah is a good man, the only truly good man of his time. He's a faithful man and keeps God always at his focus. So God decides to send a flood. But before he does, he tells Noah to build an ark, and he tells him exactly how he's supposed to do it. Then, further down, verse 22 says, Noah did everything just as God had commanded him. So Noah builds the ark, the floods come, and his family is safe. Now, can you imagine what would have happened if Noah tried to build the ark on his own? If he decided not to listen to God's instructions and built the ark how he wanted? I guess it wouldn't have gone quite as well. Now, let's take that principle and apply it to the end times. Is it possible to make it to heaven on our own? If we forget or neglect to include God in our planning and preparing, are we going to make it anywhere? If we decided that we wanted to do it our own way, that we understood everything and we don't need God anymore, we are good on our own. would we be successful? But I doubt a lot of us would intentionally put God on the back burner. Probably most of the time, we start out with good intentions, but get sidetracked and forget God entirely. Maybe we've gotten carried away planning and forgotten who this is really all about. In Luke 10, Jesus and his disciples stay with Mary and Martha. Mary is listening to Jesus' teaching, but Martha is too focused on work. Verse 40 in Luke 10, it says, "When Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made, she came to him and asked, 'Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me.' In verse 41 and 42, Jesus answered, You are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Martha has become distracted with the preparations and loses sight of the fact that Jesus is in her living room. And the most important thing is to be with him and listen to what he's saying. I think that happens often, where you're doing something which is supposed to bring you close to God and bring others close to God, but you get so distracted with the fine details that you forget that he is even there. When I was asked to do this little sermon, I got very nervous about speaking in front of people, and I had to keep on reminding myself that this isn't about me, and I had to bring my focus back to God. So basically, what I'm trying to say is I can plan and make a bunch of lists and start preparing eons ahead of time, but there was no way I was going to do anything at music camp without my flute. And there's no way that we're going to get to heaven if we don't have Jesus at the center of it all. We can't lose focus of the one thing that matters most in this whole journey, because if we do, the whole thing becomes pointless. We have to let go of our egos and let God make the necessary changes to better prepare us. Once I asked my ICS teacher for help, my mark went from a 54 to a 77%. There was no way I could have done that on my own. I had never done this before. She was the expert, and I needed to trust her. God is the expert here, not us. We don't always know what we're doing, and if we want to be ready, we can't lose sight of God.